What happens in a home when the clock hits 11:42 p.m. and the mother who should be laughing over wrapping paper suddenly goes silent? 11:42 p.m. Last seen alive. Harper Winslow sat on the living room floor, tying the ribbon on the final Christmas gift. A strand of warm lights flickered across her face. And then, almost too fast to understand, her smile fell. Why? That is the moment this entire mystery hinges on. Because nothing after 11:42 p.m. makes sense. Not the overturned mug in the kitchen. Not the unlocked back door. Not the way every sound in that house seemed to vanish at once. A mother's final moments. Harper had spent the whole evening keeping things steady for her son, Jonah. But as she wrapped that last gift, something pulled her eyes toward the hallway. Not fear, but recognition. Like she already knew what was waiting in the dark. And this is where the story stops being about Christmas and becomes about the seconds that changed everything. By morning, Mark Winslow would call 911. By noon, the town would whisper the same question. How does a mother disappear in a house that shows no sign of a struggle? But before all that, there's one detail almost everyone missed. But one detail didn't add up. Jonah told investigators he heard a soft thud around the same moment the lights dimmed. Not a scream, not a fight, just a thud, like something or someone had suddenly stopped moving. And that single sound would become the first crack in the timeline. Because the truth behind Harper's final moments is not just tragic. It is deeply personal, and it reshapes everything we think we know about Christmas Eve. Main suspect, unknown. A gift left unwrapped. A mother who vanishes. A home full of silence. And a timeline that refuses to hold together. The question now is simple. What happened between 11:42 p.m. and the moment the world went quiet? If Harper didn't leave the house, then who or what moved closer to her at 11:43 p.m.? 11:43 p.m. Timeline break. Investigators tried to anchor the night to one fixed point. But this is the exact minute where the story fractures. When Harper's ribbon slipped from her hand, she wasn't startled. She was watching something. Something that made her chest rise sharply, as if she recognized a presence she hoped would never return. And this is the detail almost everyone missed. The living room light flicker. The lights didn't flicker because of faulty wiring. Deputy Ryan Calloway confirmed that later. The breaker was untouched. The grid was steady. Yet Harper's lights dimmed twice. At the same time, an unknown cell signal pinged near the Winslow property. A signal belonging to no one in the family. That is the first real anomaly. Because while the town believed Harper walked out on her own, this new data suggested the opposite. Someone else was there. Unregistered device detected. Jonah later revealed something even heavier. He said he heard two sets of steps, one familiar, and one he had never heard before. Only a child would describe it this way. The second one didn't sound like it belonged in our house. And when investigators pressed him, he added a detail that froze the room. The unfamiliar steps stopped right outside the living room, right when Harper went silent. Unknown footsteps logged. Mark Winslow told officers he had locked every door before falling asleep. Yet the back door was found open. Not forced, not damaged. Just gently pushed outward as if someone slipped through without hurry or fear. Tessa Vaughn, Harper's sister, said it best. Harper was calm until she wasn't. Something changed. Something entered that house. And she was right. Because when investigators replayed the 11:42 to 11:44 window, one chilling truth stood out. Nothing in that house suggested Harper left. Everything suggested something or someone arrived. Arrival, not departure. The question no one wants to ask is the one you need to ask now. If Harper saw who was there, why didn't she scream? If Harper never made it to the back door, then who touched the object found inches from her last gift? 11:44 p.m. First physical evidence. Here's where the story sharpens. When the crime scene techs swept the living room, they cataloged ornaments, ribbons, scattered tape, all normal. All expected for Christmas Eve. But there was one item that did not belong. Not to Harper. Not to Mark. Not to Jonah. A single black winter glove lying next to the final wrapped gift. Not a pair. Not folded. Just one glove. Placed palm down, as if someone had quietly set it there after Harper's hands were already still. Unclaimed glove, unknown owner. What made this detail so disturbing wasn't the glove itself. It was the temperature. Every other object in the room matched the warmth of the house. But that glove? It was cold, like it had just come in from outside. Deputy Ryan Calloway knew immediately that this was their first real intrusion marker. But it gets worse. Jonah told Tessa Vaughn something he hadn't mentioned earlier. When Mom looked toward the hallway, she was staring at a hand. He wasn't sure whose. He never saw the figure attached to it. He only saw the shadow of a glove curling around the edge of the doorway. Gloved hand in the hallway. And when he blinked, the hand was gone. And Harper had stopped speaking. Mark insisted he didn't own a glove like that. Harper didn't either. No relative. No neighbor. No visitor accounted for it. The manufacturer label inside the glove was even more unsettling. It was a discontinued brand, pulled from stores 5 years ago after being linked to a string of winter burglaries across the state. But here's the most haunting part. There were no fingerprints on the glove. Not even partials. Not even smudges. Whoever touched it wore another layer beneath it, or had been there before. Why no prints? Investigators then reconstructed Harper's likely movements. She wrapped the gift. She looked up at the hallway. She froze. She whispered Jonah's name. And then the lights dimmed. But if she never left the room, how did the glove get beside her? Why place it next to her final gift? And what message was it supposed to send? This isn't a robbery. This isn't a random entry. This is personal and calculated. The timeline now cracks open. Because the glove doesn't just hint at who was there. It hints at why they came. Why would a discontinued glove, linked to old winter crimes, appear inches from Harper's last gift? The past resurfaces. This is where the story stops being about the present and turns into something Harper quietly carried for years. Tessa Vaughn finally admitted something she'd been holding back. Harper once told her, "Every December, I feel like someone is watching the house. Not in a dramatic way. Not in fear. Just a quiet confession she brushed off as holiday stress. But there was a reason. 5 winters ago, 5 years before Christmas Eve, Harper was a witness. Not in a courtroom, but in real life, to a break-in near her old apartment complex. She was walking Jonah, then a toddler, when she saw a man wearing that exact brand of black glove leaving the side alley. She reported it. The case stalled. The suspect vanished. And the brand of gloves was quietly discontinued after being tied to multiple cold weather break-ins. Harper never spoke about it again. But now, that same style of glove sits next to her final gift. Coincidence? Or return? Deputy Ryan Calloway checked records. The original suspect was never arrested, never found, never cleared. If this glove belongs to the same man, his silence for 5 years was not disappearance. It was patience. Harper didn't scream that night because she recognized something familiar. Not his face, but the way danger felt when it finally stepped back into her life. He came back for a reason. Now the question sharpens. Was Harper the target all along? Or was she keeping a secret that finally ran out of time? If Harper was the target, then why does the timeline show a second person in danger that night? 11:46 p.m. Conflicting evidence. Here is the moment investigators realized the story had 2 tracks, not one. When Deputy Ryan Calloway reconstructed the movement inside the house, he expected a clean path. Harper sees the intruder, Harper disappears, end of sequence. But there was something he couldn't ignore. 2 different sets of movements happened at the exact same minute. Harper's final placement near the tree and a separate disturbance in Jonah's bedroom occurred almost simultaneously. That was impossible unless someone else in the house was being targeted too. Disturbance detected, Jonah's room. A stuffed bear was found on the floor, not tossed, but placed carefully upright as if someone had lifted it and set it down inch by inch. Jonah swore he didn't move it. Mark didn't either. And Harper never went upstairs after 11:30. So who entered that room? And why would they move a child's toy with such eerie precision? The answer came from a small, overlooked clue, a faint smear on the doorknob. Not a fingerprint, but a trace of melted snow. Someone entered the child's room right after stepping in from the cold. And that's when the timeline snapped. 2 entries, not one. The glove in the living room and the melted snow upstairs proved something chilling. There wasn't a single intruder. There were 2. One downstairs, the one Harper recognized, and one upstairs, moving slowly, deliberately, as if searching for something specific. The real twist? Nothing was taken. Not money, not gifts, not electronics. Instead, the only object displaced was the stuffed bear. And when Tessa Vaughn saw it, her face went pale. Harper once told her, "If anything ever happens to me, check Jonah's bear." Not a dramatic warning, a mother's quiet fear she never explained. Why the bear? This is the moment the case spirals. Because the bear wasn't just moved. It was searched. Someone was looking for something Harper hid inside her son's room. Something she never told anyone about. Something worth coming back for. Which means Harper didn't just vanish. She may have protected something that 2 intruders desperately wanted. What was hidden inside a child's stuffed bear? That 2 intruders would risk everything to find? The secret inside the bear. Tessa Vaughn couldn't shake Harper's old warning. So she did what investigators hadn't yet dared to do. She unstitched the back seam of Jonah's bear. Inside was something impossibly small. Wrapped in clear plastic, pressed tight into the stuffing. A folded hospital wristband. Not Jonah's. Not Harper's. A third name. A name the family had never mentioned. A birth date that didn't match anyone in the house. And a code from a maternity ward Harper never visited. Unknown infant archived case. Deputy Ryan Calloway traced the barcode. The wristband belonged to an infant from a closed case 11 years earlier. A case involving an abandoned newborn and a missing young woman who vanished before anyone could question her. And Harper? She was the last employee on shift the night that newborn was brought in. Suddenly the glove, the intruders, the silence at 11:42 p.m. All of it pointed to one truth. Someone believed Harper took something that night. Something connected to that infant. Something they had waited over a decade to reclaim. They came for the past. Harper hid the wristband because she understood exactly what it meant. And when danger returned, she did the one thing she had always done. She protected her son first. But the wristband is only half the secret. The other half is the name printed on it. A name that will shatter the timeline completely. Who would come after a mother on Christmas Eve? For a secret hidden 11 years ago. 11:42 p.m. The final puzzle piece. Tessa Vaughn carefully unfolded the tiny hospital wristband. Printed in faded ink was a name no one in the Winslow household recognized. Lydia Harper. Not a stranger. Not an enemy. A girl Harper had known as a nurse. The infant she had quietly safeguarded all those years ago. A child whose life had been erased from records. Until someone decided to rewrite it. By terrifying the family who protected her. Target, Harper Winslow. Deputy Ryan Calloway pieced the timeline together. The black glove, the melted snow, the steps upstairs. Everything pointed to a single fact. The intruders weren't after Harper or Jonah for themselves. They were after Lydia Harper. And Harper's bravery that night, her silence, her instinct, kept Jonah safe while buying precious minutes to protect the child's legacy. Justice in motion. Within 48 hours, investigators tracked the origin of the intruders. The men linked to the decade-old case were arrested without a single life lost. Harper and Jonah were finally safe. The wristband was returned to its rightful place, closing a chapter that had haunted more than one family for years. And though the night was terrifying, Harper's courage proved that sometimes silence is the loudest form of protection. Case closed, justice served. The Winslow home remained quiet, but the lesson echoed. Even in the darkest nights, bravery and love can rewrite a story destined for tragedy. If you want to uncover more stories like this, hit subscribe to the Veil of Secret and stay with us as we follow every trail of injustice, every hidden secret, until justice is served. Subscribe for true crime stories that grip your soul. Justice prevails.